On the last episode of the Keepsake box. While David and I had been sampling the local cuisine throughout the day, we hadn't sat down to enjoy an actual meal. David inquired about a nice restaurant that catered to the elite and was a little less busy. Juanita told him that she had the perfect place. David and I showered and made our way to the restaurant suggested by Juanita. It certainly didn't disappoint. It was exquisite, yet quaint. The staff was catering and personable, and the food was like nothing else that I'd ever experienced. It was an amazing day, but my battery was dying. I was exhausted and in desperate need of rest. I expressed my sentiments to David, who completely understood. He replied, "Of course we can leave, sweetheart, but there's one thing that I have to do first." David walked around and got down onto one knee. He took my hand and looked into my eyes. He said, "Shelly, you are everything that I've ever wanted in a woman, and I would be doing myself a disservice if I didn't seize this opportunity. There isn't anyone in this world that I would rather have by my side until the day that I die. Will you marry me?" I was genuinely shocked, but ecstatic. I was fully aware that David was the marrying type, but I didn't expect a proposal at that time. The private plane and trip were both over the top. A proposal wasn't even on my radar. No wonder David insisted that the surprise would be the best one yet. As usual, he managed to make everything bigger and better. I jumped from my chair and hugged David. "Of course I'll marry you," I said. I was crying and jumping up and down. I was so excited that I hadn't taken the opportunity to view the ring. But when I did, the proposal became even more perfect. While not the most expensive piece that David had purchased for me, I immediately understood the relevance. It was a beautiful platinum ring with chocolate and white diamonds. David never missed the opportunity to make references to our interracial relationship. That was his way of officially merging us together. It was perfect. David slid the ring into my finger and looked into my eyes. He said, "This means forever, Shelly. Me, you, and Cassidy." I attempted to kiss David, but he stopped me. He again repeated his statement. "This means forever, Shelly. You understand that, right?" I put my arm around David's neck and looked into his eyes. I answered, "Yes, I understand that this means forever." Once again, I tried to kiss David, and once again he stopped me. "Promise me that you'll be by my side until the day that I die." I answered in the same manner as before. "David, I understand that this means forever, and I will be by your side until the day that I die. I promise." David smiled and told me that I had made his life complete. I was ecstatic. I found it hard to understand how I had gotten so lucky. We returned to our casita and enjoyed a night of passionate lovemaking. What a wonderful end to the anniversary of our first date. And that was only day one. Chapter 12, She's Ours. Narrated by Shandora Warren. Music by Epidemic Sound. I moved in with David after our engagement, at his insistence, of course. The return home was met with a grueling cycle of parties and planning. Engagement parties, bridal showers, wedding parties, engagement photos, dress fittings, mock ceremonies, cake testings, meetings with caterers, etc., etc. The pressure was on, as David wanted to marry on the anniversary of his proposal, the anniversary of our first date. Things could have been far less stressful, but that day held a special place in David's heart. It was the day of first for us, and he wanted to continue the tradition. With everything that we had gone on, David thought it best to pause our pursuit of Cassidy until after the wedding, and I agreed. The process was exhausting. Additionally, he and I both agreed that we would appear to be better suited to care for Cassidy as a married couple, and that made perfect sense to me. We certainly looked more stable than Mom. Even with the benefit of an entire team and unlimited resources, there never seemed to be enough hours in the day. It was inconceivable how couples managed to plan elaborate weddings without additional resources. David's attention to detail was a godsend during the process. He was exacting and wouldn't settle for anything being out of place. David made sure that everything was exactly as he wanted it. I would grow to love and hate that about him. Our hard work was evident on the day of the wedding. Everything was beautiful. The decor was beautiful. The wedding party was beautiful. And I was beautiful. The cake topper was so realistic that you would swear that David and I had shrunk ourselves and climbed on top of the cake. It was amazing. Neither of us having much family, David and I shared our day with our friends that we had accumulated throughout the years. They all complimented us on how exquisite everything was. It was perfect. I thought about my biological father a lot on that day. I wondered who and where he was. Mom had explained that he was a friend of the family, but nothing more. I wonder if things would have played out differently if he was in my life. I'm not speaking of the fact that no one walked me down the aisle. I thought about life. Would my father have saved me when I was having issues with Ron? Would he have warned me about the dangers of dating the wrong boy? Would he have handled Ken when he first put his hands on me? Would he have shown me the things in life that would have made me less impressed by a man like Antonio? Would he have helped me to know my worth? I didn't know. But if the story that Mom told was true, I guess I shouldn't have expected anything good to come of having a relationship with him. That obviously hadn't worked out for Mom. All things considered, I took it in stride. I gave myself a mental pat on the back for finally finding a situation from which I didn't have to be saved. The ceremony was followed by a short cocktail hour and reception, each a little more elaborate than the event before it. David and I shared our first dance as husband and wife as a logo of our joint initials made its way along the walls of the room. A large projection screen prominently displayed photos that documented the life that he and I had shared to that point. It was magnificent. Mandy and Tina cried throughout the entire ceremony. I wondered if their tears were the results of my happiness or their own sadness. Maybe a combination of the two. David and I held each other closely throughout the entire day. In a rare moment of separation, I entered the bathroom to find Tina looking in the mirror. It was obvious that she had been crying. Of course, I inquired about the source of her sadness. Tina tried to wave me off, saying that I shouldn't be worried about her on my special day. But I couldn't leave her. I was already invested. Tina patted her face with a napkin and gestured for me to follow her into the large family stall. She lifted her hair to display large purple bruises on the top of her back. I unzipped the back of her dress, which led to the discovery of more bruises. "Did Sean do this to you?" I asked. Tina shook her head to indicate that Sean had indeed harmed her. "Please don't say anything," she said. She told me that it would only make the situation worse. I looked at Tina's face. I could tell that she was wearing a lot of makeup, undoubtedly to cover more of Sean's handiwork. I was extremely angry. I thought back to my own experiences and became emotional. I remembered how I felt when Ken used to abuse me. I was hurt that she was experiencing a feeling that I knew all too well. Tina hugged me, leaving traces of her beige foundation on my shoulder. I was happy that I was wearing a strapless dress. I broke from Tina's embrace and looked into her eyes. I told her that she didn't deserve to be abused. I told her not to be afraid to step away from situations that no longer served her purpose. I told her that everyone deserved to be happy. Everyone deserved to be free. Tina nodded and hugged me. She seemed to appreciate the encouragement. I left the bathroom, mentally advising myself not to go over and slap Sean. Any action would have been well deserved. But I promised David that I would not involve myself in matters related to our friends, and I indeed intended to keep that promise. Besides, it was my wedding day. As we wrapped up the night, my anticipation grew over the details of our honeymoon. I was expecting big things. Over the course of our relationship, David had been known to mark each occasion with something larger than the one prior. I wasn't ever disappointed. David arranged for a car to transport us immediately after this reception. It was fancy and over the top, of course. We were driven to the garage where we boarded the plane. My plane. I would normally have attempted to take a nap, but I was far too excited. I knew that I was in for the surprise of my life. Hours later, we landed. We exited the plane and I was shocked. We were in Belize. Again. I can't say that I didn't enjoy my first experience there, but I was expecting David to present something bigger and better. Having a repeat vacation wasn't in line with how I knew David to operate, specifically for such a momentous occasion, but I trusted David to make it memorable. He always did. We boarded a small boat and made the short trip to an island. I noticed immediately that it was a different island than the one we visited the year before. It was definitely less populated, that's for sure. There were a few people walking around, but they all looked like the working class. They definitely weren't the beautiful people. We stepped off of the boat and onto a short pier. There was someone waiting on the other side. It was Juanita. David and I both greeted her with kisses. It was all very strange. I didn't feel insecure about David kissing her. It was as if she belonged to us. Juanita looked at me and smiled. "Welcome home," she said. I looked at David. I loved Belize, but I certainly had no desire to move there. David read my mind and addressed me. "Relax, sweetheart. It's fine." I trusted him, so I let go of my apprehension. We stepped off of the pier and onto the island. It was beautiful. Thick foliage and exotic trees encased the entire perimeter. Once inside, it was nearly impossible to see anything outside of the island. We walked a few feet where we encountered something covered by a white piece of fabric. I looked at David. He was smiling. "Go ahead," he said. I removed the cloth and found the surprise of my life. There stood a sign. It read, "Welcome to Herkowitz Island." I'm sure my eyes expanded to the size of quarters. "Are you serious?" I screamed. To which David responded, "You deserve the best, sweetheart." I couldn't believe it. There I was, disappointed about a return trip to Belize, and David had purchased an island for us. An entire island. David grabbed my left hand and Juanita grabbed the right. She gave us a tour of the island. It was small, but it was obvious that everything was specifically designed with us in mind. There was a restaurant that had pictures and personal touches directly related to us and our experiences. Everything was beautiful and exquisitely detailed, but the best surprise was yet to come. We approached a small body of water near the middle of the island. Directly to its posterior was a casita, a huge casita. It was ours. David led me inside. It was beautiful. It was spacious and beautifully furnished. Unlike the one that we stayed in the year before, there were clearly defined living and sleeping areas. Floor-to-ceiling windows made up the entire rear of the casita, which allowed me to view a large pool and hot tub outside. The house was stocked with all of our favorite foods and drinks. David made sure to tell me that the staff was there to tend to our every need. "So no one else lives on this island?" I asked. "It's just us," said David. I jumped on David and wrapped my legs around his waist. I passionately kissed him. "Once again, you've managed to outdo yourself," I said. David was sure to give Juanita her credit. He told me that it couldn't have been done if Juanita hadn't been there to oversee the details. Apparently, they had been coordinating their efforts over the course of that year. I was pleasantly surprised, and I thanked Juanita. "Where's my kiss?" she asked. I turned to David, awaiting his approval. "By all means," he said. I kissed Juanita in the same intensity that I had kissed David. No part of the interaction was uncomfortable. I was ecstatic, and not just about the island. I was excited to see Juanita as well. Since the year prior, David and I had returned to our busy work schedules and mundane sex life. Belize was a cure for the first, and Juanita was a cure for the latter. It had been a busy and eventful day, and a shower was on high list of things to do. David suggested that we all take a shower together, so we did. I'm sure I don't have to tell you this, but we had sex in the shower. Great sex. It was amazing how a change in location brought out a completely different David. I loved it. David was unadventurous at home. Actually, he was quite boring. But Belize David was fun. He was exciting. Belize David was also sexually adventurous. I guess it helped that we were amongst strangers. David was extraordinarily cautious at home, never wanting to give up on his perceived perfection. But Belize David dismissed all of his indiscretions, and I mean all of them. We finished our joint shower and exited the bathroom. I opened my suitcase, prepared to put on whatever skimpy outfit David had prearranged for me. "I was thinking," said David, "this is our island, right?" I nodded in agreement. He continued, "It's well within our means to make the rules, right?" I again nodded. "Well," he said, "do we really even have to wear clothes at all?" I was shocked. "You want us to walk around out there nude?" I asked. David replied, "Who's going to stop us?" Admittedly, I was more than apprehensive. "Let's try this," said David. He ruffled through my suitcase and removed a sheer netted dress, much like the ones I had worn the year prior. He placed the dress over my head and I completed the process. He turned me around to face the mirror. While my entire body was visible through the netting, the dress actually made me a little more comfortable. He retrieved another for Juanita, which she politely declined. She was completely comfortable with her nudity, as was David. David went into his suitcase and retrieved a bag of pills. "Let's have some fun," he said. David took a strategically placed bottle of water off of one of the nightstands. We all took turns taking a pill and chasing it with water from the same bottle. It was 12 a.m. After a morning wedding, reception, and hours of travel time, the pill ensured that we were all still full of energy. I lost my ability to feel uncomfortable. I removed my dress and threw it onto the couch, joining David and Juanita in nudity. David looked at me and smiled. "When in Rome," I said. We walked out of the casita as high as kites and as naked as newborn babies. We laughed and held conversation, completely oblivious to the stares from staff members. We didn't care. It was our island, and we were paying them to act as if they didn't care either. They were of no consequence to us. We carelessly walked around, eating fruit from the trees and taking in the sights. We returned to the casita around 3 a.m. We had drinks and, well, you know. We finally went to sleep around 8 a.m. and slept throughout most of the day. That's how we lived for 2 weeks. The last day of our stay was simultaneously joyous and sad. 2 weeks of pills and partying had left me exhausted. I was actually excited about the return home. I knew I would miss Belize though. I would miss Juanita as well. I made David promise that we would visit at least once a year, and he promised that we would. I got dressed for the first time in 2 weeks. Juanita walked us to the pier so we could catch the boat back to the plane. David and I both hugged and kissed Juanita. I joked with David as if I were a kid begging for a puppy. "Can we keep her, Daddy? Please?" David looked at me with the utmost sincerity. "Sure, why not?" he said. I laughed. David didn't laugh. Neither did Juanita. "Are you serious?" I asked. David alternated glances between the two of us. "Well, why not?" he asked. "We could certainly use some help around the house, and I'm sure Juanita is tired of struggling through the off-season. Additionally, wouldn't it be more convenient to have someone in the house to assist with Cassidy while we're at work? It's the perfect solution for everyone." It didn't take long for me to agree. The moment David mentioned assistance with Cassidy, I was in. Juanita, however, seemed reluctant to accept David's offer. David inquired about her apprehension. Juanita paused and stated that she didn't want to intrude. We were newly married, and she felt that we needed time to adjust to being newlyweds. Juanita also stated that the short notice meant that we would have to wait for her to pack, which would throw our schedule off. Usually one to be strict about time-related matters, David surprised me by ignoring the obvious alteration to the schedule. "They'll just have to wait," he said. David pacified Juanita by ensuring that she would be no imposition. Additionally, he would provide her with everything that she needed. Thus, there was no need to pack heavily. There really was no reason to oppose. Juanita was originally from Guatemala. She had gained U.S. citizenship, but returned to Central America after struggling to make a decent living in the U.S. We really were offering her the opportunity of a lifetime. Juanita smiled and agreed to join us in the United States. I was ecstatic. We took Juanita to her island to retrieve her important items. And just like that, guess what? She was ours. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure to follow Shenny Tells a Story on Facebook and Instagram. I'd love to hear from you. If you'd like to purchase books by Shandora Warren, they're all available on Amazon in ebook, paperback, and some in hardback formats. Thank you for helping me to create the world that I want to see. Oh yeah, you're welcome.